friends, welcome back to my channel. And in today's video we are going to be talking about all of the things that I read in October that I have not mentioned to you yet, either in a video to come or a video that's already up on my channel. So the first book that I have to talk to you about is Tender is the Flesh. Now this is a pretty short horror book, so I'm not going to get too in-depth into what it is about, but you are basically following a man who works at a meatpacking plant. However, in this alternate reality, there has been a disease, an incurable disease that has swept over the animal population, making them inedible for humans, and humans have started eating each other. Now this is done in like a legal way, so you have to like purchase special meats, and just killing people and eating them is seen as like a bad way to go about it, but there's still people that do it. I did end up giving this 5 stars. This is amazing. I can't explain to you the levels of disgustingness that I felt during this. It's just so immersive, and you're following the main character as he just slowly becomes something not good. Like in the beginning of the book, you're like, oh, he's a good character, he's in a world that's like really hard for him, and then that slowly changes over time, and it's amazing. It's very dark. Like the whole time from beginning to end I was disgusted. There is obviously cannibalism in this, but there's also some animal cruelty later on in the book that was quite overwhelming for me to read. Thankfully it wasn't too long, but the whole thing is just disgusting and just like exactly what I wanted out of the story. The descriptions, especially when you're in like the plant, like the textile plants, the meatpacking plants, like all of it, it's just horrific. So I then read a couple of Halloween horror books that Halloween romance books that I was going to do a video for that I ended up scrapping. So the first one was Bat Out of Hell. These are all pretty short novellas, and this one is about a woman who is getting dressed one day and a bat flies into her window, and when she goes outside to investigate this bat, it turns into a man, and they have like a smutty good time. It's really funny, very kind of just cute, and the hero is just funny. Like they have some nice little banter back and forth. The hero is definitely a piner. He has been pining after her for a while, and it's just cute. We then have Treat Yourself, which is, I don't think has any smut in it at all, but it is about a woman who owns a bakery, and her crush slash the guy crushing on her is a contractor, and he helps her with like an event that's taking place, and because he wants to go on a date with her, but he knows that she's really busy, and if she can't make it through this event, then she won't go on a date with him, and it's very cute. We then have Bump in the Night, which is about a girl named Buffy who works at a like museum that specializes in like Halloween stuff, or like spooky stuff, and every year they put on like a vampire layer, and the hero puts it on. Like he's the one that designs the set and puts it up and everything, and they have a little romance, and it's pretty cute. I mean, all of these are like your stereotypical like Halloween centered novellas, so they're nothing wild, but if you want to read something Halloween-y, then I would say check this out. And then the last one that I read, I wouldn't necessarily say is Halloween-y, I would say it's like more fall, but it is Bewitching You. This is it's slightly longer than the other ones were, and I ended up giving it 3 stars, whereas the other ones all got 4. But this is about a enemies to lovers relationship between a guy and his best friend's ex-girlfriend or ex-wife or something, and she has some sort of like I can't remember what sort of business she has, but he supplies her pumpkins because he has like a farm, and he has to help her with an event, and it's just very cute. Like they're getting over each other's you know, the miscommunication of their relationship, etc. It's nothing to write home about, but it's cute. So then I read Goddess of Filth, and I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. This is a very short horror. I think the audiobook is maybe like 4 hours, but it's very like, the beginning is very much The Craft. It's about friends who perform a seance or perform some sort of spell, and it summons something that takes possession of their friend, and then she starts acting very different. But this has a very interesting spin on it. It's almost like, all I'll say is it's Jennifer's body, except if you root for the thing that's possibly taking possession of her. So I would definitely recommend it. I think it's very good if you are looking for a short horror like possession story, and the idea behind the possession is very interesting, and I think it's a new twist that makes it different and interesting. So then we have Always Lived in a Castle. Now this is a horror, like a gothic horror, I guess, but it's basically from the point of view of this young girl, and her family lives in this estate, and nobody in town likes them, and her family has kind of a long history in this town, and we are slowly unraveling the secrets of this family. There was, like 5 years ago, a murder, we think, like a mass murder, possibly a mass murder. It's really unclear, and you're really just like following this family as like stuff is happening, but like just these random events are happening. I did end up giving it 5 stars. Like, it's so atmospheric, and even though like a little bit into the story I figured out the twist, it just reminds me of all of the good things about a horror, like a gothic horror book. You're just following this little girl going through these family events. Her uncle, she's taken care of by her sister, I think, and her uncle is ill, and he has lost his memory, and so you're just like living with them through a couple of days, and a big event happens at the end. Their cousin or uncle or something shows up, and he wants to make some changes in the family, but it's just good. Like, it's a good gothic story. I then read Home Invaded. Now this is another short horror novella that I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Basically, this is about a family who, in the middle of the night, 2 people break into their house and start torturing them, and the idea is that it's between the husband and the wife. The idea is to see how much they can endure before they no longer love each other. Like, they force the wife and the husband and wife to hurt each other to see like how much they can endure, and it's fucked. It's like fucked up. There's some disgusting stuff in it. Like, it's definitely extreme. There is a lot of trigger warnings. It is very extreme, and yeah, it's fucked up. Next up, I read Deal with the Devil. I had gotten a free ebook, and I think it's still free, of this, and then I saw that my library had it as an audiobook, so I decided to pick it up. It's pretty short as well. It's about a woman who ends up at a poker game with the hero, and she's like supposed to be a pro poker player, I think. She ends up losing a hand to him, and the bet was that she would bet herself because she needs some money for something. I gave it 3 stars. Like, it was fine. It was your stereotypical like dominating alpha relationship. The hero, like, there wasn't anything super memorable about it. So I then read A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is the prequel. It's the novella between the latest book and the 3rd book in the series, in the ACOTAR series, and I did give this 3 stars, but like, I didn't enjoy myself. Like, I don't quite know what the point of the novella was. You're literally just following a bunch of different points of view of like the gang and stuff after, like, during Christmas, and my main takeaway was like, I'm ready for Rhysand and Feyre to not be main characters anymore because they're fucking annoying. So next up, we have 4 Aunties and a Wedding. This is the sequel to Dial A for Aunties. I ended up giving both of them 4 stars, but this one follows her wedding and some shenanigans that are going on. I can't get too deep into the plot because it is a sequel, but I just love these stories. I love listening to the audiobooks. I think that they're so fun and funny, and the hijinks that they get up to is just always so ridiculous. I will say I felt like this had one too many of those like oh shit moments, like one too many of the could this get any worse, and then things get worse. It just was a little too much, and if you have read this or things like this, you probably can imagine the feeling that I'm discussing or that I'm talking about, but it was just it was a tad much. Next up we have She Who Became the Sun. This is a adult, shockingly, fantasy following two main characters, and in the beginning of the story you are following the girl, the unnamed narrator, and she is a poor orphan, and in the village that she lives in they are lacking food and water, and they have basically starved all of the other women in the village to death. She's the only one left. And on her brother's birthday, the only other family members that she has is her older brother and her father. And on her brother's birthday, they go to a fortune teller who tells her brother that he is going to be greatness and she is going to be nothing. And they end up getting assaulted by some rebels, and they kill her father, which sends her brother into a deep depression. He ultimately ends up dying, and she assumes his identity and goes to a monastery to achieve this greatness. And then we are also following the point of view of a general for the government's. So the emperor's son's kid is currently leading an army against the rebels that are threatening to overthrow the current emperor, and his right hand guy person is the one that you're following. And I ended up giving this 3 stars. Like, I wanted to love this. I thought that in the very beginning I was very, very gripped, but unfortunately after we left the monastery and we saw the two timelines converge, it slowed way down and got, sorry about that, my camera died. I hope everything looks the same. So you're also following his right hand who is leading the armies, and he is sort of this unknown character that a lot of people fear because he's said to be really ruthless. He's also an Enoch, and he is viewed as an other. There's a lot of conversation around gender identity and queerness and stuff like that in this, and I enjoyed it, like I said, for the beginning part, but overall there was nothing about this that screamed adult, and I don't mean that in the way that YA is bad, but I think this just needed more brutality because the stakes felt so low. Like, the idea that this is a war fantasy engenders a certain vision of what the story is going to be like, and it just wasn't like that at all. It just felt like everything was going to be fine, there was no stakes, and it just was slow. So there is fisting in this, which, you know. I then decided to reread The Poppy War because I had gotten the sequel from my library, and I actually gave this 4 stars. When I first read it, I gave it 3 stars. This is another war fantasy. It is based on Chinese history and mythology, as is the previous one, She Who Became the Sun. That one was set in like 1300s during the Mongol rule, whereas this one, I can't quite pinpoint what time period it is because it's not like directly one-for-one Chinese history, and I don't know enough about Chinese history to like really tell you. But this is basically about Ren, who is from a poor village, and she takes this aptitude test that is supposed to get her a scholarship into a good school. She is a war orphan and her foster parents are opium dealers, and so they have her running opium, and in the beginning of the book they tell her that she is going to be married off to the local, like, the dude that's in charge of like importation and stuff. And so she decides she wants to take this exam to get out of the marriage, and she gets placed in Singard, which is a military academy, and this is really focusing on shamanism. There is the latter half of the book is about war and like military strategy and a bunch of different stuff. I really enjoyed the first one. I definitely think that Ren's decision making doesn't always make the most sense. Like, overall, the making bad decisions makes sense with her character because she is so young and she's just not really experienced. But in that context, even the decisions that she makes just doesn't really make sense. And then I did end up DNFing the second one because she just got so bad in the second one that it was like I couldn't finish it. So next up, I read The Lives of Locke Lamora, which I have been trying to read for like a year now, but I finally finished it and I gave it 5 stars. This is such a good fantasy. This is about Locke Lamora, who is a thief, and he was an orphan, and he gets raised by this guy named Chains, who teaches him how to basically be a thief for like the upper class, like not a pickpocket or anything like that, but like run long cons basically. And you are following him running a con with a current, like a duke in his city, and then also when he gets embroiled in some like mafia gang related stuff. And the fantasy, I will say, in this is pretty light. It's more like alchemy, and it doesn't delve too deep into that aspect of it. And I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It's very witty and snappy dialogue, very much like the new King Arthur movie. That's what I like constantly compare it to, because that's how the dialogue feels. But I just loved it. It was fantastic, and I'm super excited to continue. Like, Locke is such an interesting character. He might be one of my favorite fantasy characters. So definitely excited to finish, or to continue the series. And that is the last thing that I finished this month. I will quickly go over what I DNF'd because I know some people have said that they enjoy hearing about those. I DNF'd A Garden of Earthly Bodies, which I got recommended by Scribd because I enjoyed Tender as the Flesh. This is about a woman who, after the death of her sister, starts noticing growths, like hair growth on her back, and she gets sent to a doctor who recommends that she goes to this treatment facility, and it was like nothing. I think I DNF'd it at almost the 60% mark, and she wasn't even at the facility yet, and it was just boring. So I definitely DNF'd that. And then I also DNF'd The Wall of Winnipeg and Me. I have never read anything by Mariana Zapata before. I'm definitely interested in continuing. I just don't think this is the story for me. This is about a woman who is the assistant for a football player, like a pro footballer. Is that what they're called? Footballer? Do you call them footballers? I don't know. But she ends up leaving so that she can pursue self-employment, and he comes to her and says, like, I need you to marry me so I can get my green card, because this visa is gonna expire. And that's all I know. I'm assuming they marry. I don't know. I don't know anything about the rest of the book, but I DNF'd it at like 20-ish% because the heroine was insufferable. And I have heard previously that like Mariana Zapata's heroines are hit or miss, and they're all very quirky, and she just was annoying. And then the last thing I DNF'd was Burning Gods, or whatever it's called, which, you know, I discussed already. So those are all of the things that I read in October. Please let me know down in the comments your favorite read of October, or if you've read anything that I've read. I would love to know. If you don't have anything to say, leave any Halloween related emoji that you would like to. If you are looking for more content from me, make sure you check out my Instagram and my podcast Instagram. You can also check out my podcast on all your favorite streaming platforms. It is a horror podcast. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next one.